Good evening, story timers. Tonight, we're going to read from the Fierce 44 again. I call it the Fierce 44 Part 2. As we discussed previously, we talked about three different black Americans who shook up the world in the United States culture. And we're going to read about three new people tonight from this same book, The Fierce 44, because we have 44 to choose from. So we're going to talk about three other ones tonight. Very excited to share those with you. We're going to begin with our first one. Last time we read about two ladies and one gentleman. Tonight we'll read about two gentlemen and one lady this evening. So pay very close attention to the story, and also pay close attention to what the poll question may be. All right, we can get right into it tonight for our story time extravaganza. This is for the last time, last week of camp, last story time for Camp Challenge. So I hope you enjoy it. The first person we're going to talk about is a favorite of mine because he's always had some wonderful quotes. And I used to have a poster of this person in my room with one of his quotes. And the person we're going to talk about this evening is Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali is not only a famous world boxer, as it says up here, but also an activist. He's one of the athletes in our history who has spoken out against things that he disagreed with and against the injustices of other people, what he considered injustice of other people. So tonight we're going to read about Muhammad Ali, the boxer, the activist. Muhammad Ali was born in 1942 and passed away in 2016. So let's learn more about Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, who loudly proclaimed himself both pretty and the greatest boxer of all time, set the standard for social activism by athletes. He was named Cassius Clay when he was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and he started boxing at the age of 12 after someone stole his bike. At 18, Clay had won an Olympic gold medal. A short 4 years later, he beat the heavily favored Sonny Liston to become the world heavyweight champion. The next day, Clay showed the world that he was more than a great boxer, announcing that he was joining the Nation of Islam and getting rid of his slave name, quote unquote. He would now be known as Muhammad Ali. So before he was known as Muhammad Ali, his birth name was Cassius Clay. And then he joined the Nation of Islam and his name was changed to Muhammad Ali. At the time, black athletes were expected to be credits to the race by being modest and dignified and staying quiet about issues affecting the country. Ali rejected all of that. He was nicknamed the Louisville Lip, mocking opponents and often forecasting his victory in rhyme. He became a Muslim in a predominantly Christian country. And at a time when fighting for civil rights meant pushing for integration, Ali joined a religious group that preached racial separation. Ali also questioned America's participation in the Vietnam War and refused to be drafted into the army. He was stripped of his boxing titles and put on trial for evading the draft. Ali eventually won his case after appealing it all the way to the Supreme Court. But for more than 3 years, no one would pay him to fight. After his trial, Ali went on to win the world heavyweight title for an unprecedented third time in a bout against undefeated heavyweight champion George Foreman in the Rumble in the Jungle in Kinshasa, Zaire, which is in the country of Africa. Ali, at age 32, was the underdog, but with an 8th round knockout, he reclaimed the title that had been taken from him years earlier because of his opposition to the war. A lifelong social activist and philanthropist, Ali received many honors for his humanitarian work, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So there's Muhammad Ali, and up here it says, because he was the greatest, just like he said he was. Muhammad Ali, also known as the greatest, arguably the greatest boxer of all time. So the poll question for the first story, Muhammad Ali, the poll question is, at what age was Muhammad Ali when he won an Olympic gold medal? How old was Muhammad Ali when he won an Olympic gold medal? If you think you know the answer, go ahead and comment the answer in the comment section, or write the answer in the comment section. Make sure you put your first and last name, or at least your first name, so we know who it is. All right? Now, let's go on to the next person we're going to read about this evening. The next person we're going to talk about is another favorite of mine. I know you probably at this point you're probably thinking everybody's a favorite of yours, which is probably true. We have a lot of people in this particular book that I'm a big fan of. This next person, this lady, is known to a lot of people, but is not widely talked about. So glad I get a chance to share some information about her tonight. Her name is Miss Henrietta Lacks. Miss Henrietta Lacks. She is part of the Hella Cell line. Okay? She was born in 1920 and passed away in 1951. So let's read about Miss Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta Lacks was an accidental pioneer of modern day medicine. She was 31 years old and had 5 children when she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. Just months before her death, doctors at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore took pieces of tissue from her cancerous tumor without her consent, took it without her knowing. Lacks was not a slave, but parts of her cancerous tumor represent the first isolated human cells ever bought and sold. Her cells, known among scientists as Hella because of her name, H-E for Henrietta, L-A for Lacks, were unusual in that they could rapidly reproduce and stay alive long enough to undergo multiple tests. So let's pause right there. So without Henrietta's knowledge, some doctors took samples of cells that were inside her body and used them for science experiments. And because her cells were so special, because they could test them over and over and over again, and these cells would still live, which is unusual because most cells that underwent a lot of tests ended up not lasting very long, but hers did. So they took it without her knowledge to do science experiments on it. All right, let's continue. Descendants of Lacks cells live in laboratories across the world and are worth billions of dollars. They played an important part in developing the polio vaccine, cloning, gene mapping, and vitro fertilization. The HeLa cell line has been used to develop drugs for treating herpes, leukemia, influenza, and Parkinson's disease. The cells have been influential in the study of cancer, lactose digestion, sexually transmitted diseases, and appendicitis. While scientists knew her name, for many years her own family did not know her cells were being used or that billions of dollars had been made because of those experiments. It wasn't until a writer named Rebecca Skloot started a book about Lacks and the HeLa cell line that the public learned what had happened and how little her husband and children knew about her legacy. Her cells are saving lives today, but no doctor can be proud of how Lacks was treated. It's very true. So Lacks appears because she was the subject of a medical experiment that is still saving lives today. So her cells, her cells are still saving lives today. So the poll question for that great story about a wonderful woman who didn't know that her cells were being used to save many lives, billions of lives today, is Henrietta Lacks. So the poll question is this: what was the name of the cell? What did medical scientists call the cell that has been used in experiments? What is the name? What name did they call it? That has been used in experiments to help treat many of the world's diseases. So that is the poll question for the story about from Miss Henrietta Lacks. Now keep in mind, we're going to read about 3 people. So you have the option of answering poll question 1, poll question 2, or poll question 3, or all of them. Okay? If you know the answers, if you're paying attention and you say, Mr. Bunting, I know the answers, you can answer the poll question for all of them. All right, but you must answer at least one for one of the 3 stories. Now the last person we're going to read about is a gentleman. He's a gentleman. And he's somebody else who is somewhat talked about, but not as much. And this person, ironically enough, has something named after him in the city of Pittsburgh. So for all of us Western Pennsylvania people, Pittsburgh area people, this is especially a great story to learn about. The name of this gentleman is August Wilson. August Wilson. And August Wilson is a playwright, which means he wrote plays. And he is known as America's Shakespeare because he is America's Shakespeare. Okay. So let's read about Mr. August Wilson, who was born in 1945 and passed away in 2005. It says, playwright August Wilson made his life's work to document, explain, and validate the everyday lives of African Americans. Between 1984, when Ma Rainey's Black Bottom premiered, which is the name of his play, and 2005, when he died at age 60, Wilson produced what he called the American Century Cycle. It consisted of one play for every decade of the 20th century, a trajectory that went from the aftermath of slavery through the Great Migration and the Civil Rights Movement to the dawn of gentrification. Wilson's body of work stands as one of the greatest in the history of dramatic literature. He won 2 Pulitzer Prizes and multiple Tony and New York Drama Critics Circle Awards. Repeat that. He won 2 Pulitzer Prizes and multiple Tony and New York Drama Critics Circle Awards. Raised in Pittsburgh, Wilson set nearly all his work in his home neighborhood of the Hill District. Yet it was only when he moved to largely white St. Paul, Minnesota, in his 30s that he began to fully hear and channel the spoken word poetry of the musicians, preachers, gamblers, jitney drivers, and sanitation workers among whom he had lived. With the American Century Cycle, Wilson transmuted their voices into art for the ages. So that's a wonderful story about somebody local. It's from the city of Pittsburgh, and in particular the Hill District neighborhood in Pittsburgh, Mr. August Wilson. Mr. August Wilson. Now, for this, the final poll question about Mr. August Wilson. I've mentioned that he won several different awards. I need you to name one of the awards that he won. What is the name of one of the awards that he won, that Mr. August Wilson won? I want you to put that in the comment section along with your name. What's one of the awards Mr. August Wilson had won? Okay. Now keep in mind, there are 3 poll questions. You can answer question 1, question 2, or question 3. Or you can answer 2 questions, or you can answer them all. Okay? So this concludes our final part of the Fierce 44. I hope you enjoy learning about maybe some people you didn't know much about, or maybe people you didn't know anything about at all, or maybe it's just a review of people that you've already been made aware of before. But in either way, hope you learned something from 6 people from the Fierce 44. And hope you enjoyed the last week of camp. And please answer the poll question. And have a good evening.